If your loved one is at risk of a fall, the Symphony Medical Alert System from CVS Health can help support their safety in their home with 24/7 emergency monitoring, even when you can't be there. Terms and conditions apply. Learn more about Symphony at cvs.com/symphony or find it at your nearest CVS Health Hub.
Kids need wholesome snacks to fuel their bodies and imaginations, like the delicious soft-bake organic Cliff Kid Z-Bar. With 10 grams of whole grains, it was made for active kids like mine. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm on stopwatch duty for the backyard obstacle course. Grab a box of Cliff Kid Z-Bar snacks for playtime anytime.
Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Infertile AF, the podcast. This is episode 110 called Allie.
Hey everyone, it's Allie and Blair, the co-founders of Fertility Rally, and we wanted to tell you about an amazing event we're hosting on Saturday, April 17th.
The event is called Fertility Rally Live, an all-day virtual celebration of the infertility community for anyone and everyone building their modern families and seeking empowerment, education, support, and community.
Our speakers are some of the biggest names and brightest minds in the infertility community and beyond. Our morning keynotes are Mina Starsiak-Hawk and Steve Hawk from HGTV's Good Bones, and our afternoon keynote is Jessica Zucker, PhD and author of the acclaimed memoir, I Had a Miscarriage.
In addition to those two amazing keynotes, we're hosting a couples panel, a female physicians panel, and 16 breakout sessions covering everything we could squeeze into one day, including surrogacy, IVF, pregnancy after infertility, male factor infertility, donor conception, embryo adoption, recurrent pregnancy loss, and so much more.
There will also be tons of giveaways all day long from fertility-friendly and wellness brands. And of course, a happy hour with a very special guest, a VIP after party, and a virtual swag bag worth hundreds of dollars.
If you or someone you know is navigating infertility, you will love our event. We are here to empower and educate you and have some fun along the way, of course. Tickets are on sale now at fertilityrally.com. Head over to our IG at Fertility Rally for even more info on speakers and tickets. We can't wait to rally with you.
Guys, I'm so excited to tell you about Beli for Women Prenatal, which just hit the market. 92% of women don't get even close to the 450 milligrams of recommended choline they need in their diets. And in a recent study, most prenatals don't contain much of any choline at all. Beli's women's formula includes 400 milligrams of choline. Beli did things differently when they created their prenatal. They looked at the research and they evaluated what key ingredients were needed to help women prepare their bodies to be the healthiest they can to conceive, grow, and welcome new little lives. Beli is formulated with the right nutrients to help boost your fertility, increase egg quality, and support IVF to increase your chances of conception and a healthy pregnancy. Then once you're pregnant, Beli is gentler on the stomach to reduce the effects of morning sickness, made with methylated B vitamins and the right amount of choline to support your baby's development. To get started with Beli, go to belibaby.com and use code ALLIE15 for 15% off your first month of either Beli Women or Beli Men. Again, that's code ALLIE, ALI15 at belibaby.com. That's BELIBABY.com. Thanks, Beli.
Hi, it's Kanika, and I'm back with a brand new season of That's Total Mom Sense, where I interview parenting experts, world-renowned thought leaders, best-selling authors, and trailblazing entrepreneurs on their incredible life stories and mom sense experiences.
Hi, I'm Gabby Bernstein, and you're listening to me on That's Total Mom Sense.
It's me, Bobby Brown, on Total Mom Sense. Can't wait to share my story.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lisa, and you're listening to me on That's Total Mom Sense.
Pandemic or not, these episodes will inspire you to make every single day count. Episodes release on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Join my tribe and subscribe wherever you listen so you never miss an episode.
Okay, guys, so let me tell you about Allie Egan. She is the founder and CEO of Veracity, which is a skincare line. And prior to founding Veracity, she was the CEO of women's fashion brand Cynthia Rowley. And she is not only a badass entrepreneur, she's a fertility warrior. She's become a good friend of mine. And today we're talking about everything she went through to have her baby, including a diagnosis of Hashimoto's, not telling a soul that she and her husband were going through IVF, a pregnancy of unknown location, the suggestion at one point that maybe they should take out one of her tubes, and so much more. So without further ado, this is Allie's infertility story. Allie, hello. I love a fellow Allie.
Yes, all the Allies.
All the Allies. Thank you so much for doing this. It's great to talk to you. I always like to start at the very beginning, which is kind of, did you always want to be a mom?
Yeah, I did always want to be a mom, but I wouldn't say it was like, I never felt this like, I want to be a mom by X time or anything like that. It was just something that I felt I knew would happen at some point in my life. And, I think you also met your husband quite young, but, I met my husband. Well, yeah, that's really young.
Yeah. We were 16, which is crazy.
That's so cute. But we met, we were 21 and, we kind of, and like that you have your person. So I feel really lucky, but in a way, I think it made us like not rush to be like, oh, we should start having kids or family plan or anything like that. And I was like super, super career focused, but in the back of my mind knew I always wanted to have a family and be a mom.
How did you guys meet?
We met in college in undergrad. We actually met. So we both went to the University of Virginia, but we met on like a study abroad trip. So I actually met him in Heathrow Airport. So that was a fun.
Well, that's a good story. What happened?
Well, we were both dating other people at the time. So nothing happened then, but we just kind of like had this spark that ignited and then broke up with our significant others and then started dating our senior year of college and, the rest is history.
Okay. So when you guys, you got together at 21, how long before you guys got married?
We got married when we were 27. So a little while, we got, engaged and had the longer engagement, all that kind of stuff. So we got married in fall of 2013. And then I actually started business school the following year in 2014. So we were kind of like still not even in family mode at that point.
Was anything happening with your fertility or like, had you ever had any problems with like periods or like weird cycles or anything like that growing up?
I had nothing, but looking back on it, I had been on hormonal birth control. And then when I went to business school, I actually got an IUD for since I was 17 years old. So I had no insight into what was going on or potentially going on. And honestly, it's one of my biggest regrets now, because I think it's so important for women to have that, health check, right?
Yes.
Into what's going on. And it's just, for just women get prescribed birth control for so many reasons from I work in skincare and I can't tell you how many people are like, I got put on birth control because of my skin. So, nothing that I knew of until we were actually trying, which was super frustrating for me.
Yeah. I mean, we talk all the time about how it would be so nice if at a certain age, women just had kind of a baseline test of, before they were even considering having kids. Cause I feel like so many of us go into this so blind, not thinking there's going to be an issue, and you don't really realize it until you're in the midst of it. And then you're like, holy shit, what's going on? I had no idea.
Right. And the frustrating thing is some things with fertility, there are natural remedies too, right? Where you can change your diet, get on certain supplements and sometimes things are able to work themselves out, which is great. But that requires a lot of time. And I guess to just get into it, I went to business school and I got an IUD.
Did you go to Harvard Business School, by the way?
I did go to Harvard Business School.
That's pretty fucking impressive.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
No, it was wonderful. And honestly, such a great experience. And I had, I definitely had a couple of people ask me, they're like, oh, are you going to have a kid while you're at business school? I'm like, what? No. I'm like, I am I just got into Harvard Business School. Like, I'm going to focus on myself. I'm going to like accelerate my career. It's like the first time in, since I started working that I'm going to have a break and I'm going to travel and do like awesome, fun things. And so,
right. What were your business goals? I know you were CEO of Cynthia Rowley, right?
Yeah. So I started my career in finance. So it was on investment banking and then private equity. And I had seen from working with some of our companies that we had investments in that I was like, I really want to kind of be on the other side of the table and like be running a business. Like I felt like I really wanted this like left brain, right brain balance where I was like doing both of those things. So I went to business school with that sort of like, trying to make that transition. And after I went to work for Estee Lauder, I worked at 3 of their big brands, Clinique, Gorgeons, and La Mer. And then I joined Cynthia Rowley as CEO before launching my company now.
That's
Veracity,
incredible. So yeah, tell us about Veracity real quick before we get back to your story.
Yeah, well, it kind of comes honestly, like because of my infertility journey is really what inspired the business. So I can kind of get into it throughout. I'm sure I'll like regurgitate this, but basically, I had this skin issue with like, I had these like dry patches above my eyes and it came out of nowhere. And I went through like what a lot of women do where, you're like, okay, let me talk to my dermatologist, like Google literally everything under the sun, like try all these different products. And I couldn't get any relief from this. Like it would get better for a little bit and then come back. And it wasn't until I went through this infertility journey that I realized that my skin issue was caused by an imbalance in my thyroid that I found out through infertility testing and led me to create Veracity. And, again, I can get into this a little more, but, we are basically, we're really trying to help people get to the root causes of their skin issues through proactive testing. And so we have an at-home skin plus health test that helps you to sort of uncover what's going on and driving your skin. And then we provide like personalized recommendations, both for your skin and sort of more holistically too. So
that's really cool.
It's really cool.
And really well needed and like disruptive, right? There's nothing really out there like that right now. So that's awesome.
No, that's what I wanted to provide is like personalization that's like actually health driven, right? And like not just some like dumb kind of like quiz that you fill out and you're like, okay, these were the products I was going to choose anyway. And I just really hate these like skin. No one really knows what their skin type is, and it's not really helpful. Or
they give you like changes. 3 options, right? It's like dry, oily combination, and you're like, there's got to be a million other options here.
Yeah, or you're like, what day are you talking about?
Exactly.
Like, it's different every day.
Completely. Well, that's amazing. So yeah, let's talk about that more. But continuing on with your story, so what happened when you and your husband did start to finally try to have kids?
So we took like a relaxed approach, which I think a lot of people do. And I had this IUD in. And so we're like, well, let's just get it taken out and kind of just like stop not trying. And so I got it taken out like, a year or so into working at Estee Lauder. And I was like, all right, then probably, within 4 or 5 months or something, I could be pregnant or, at least like on the way to there. So I got my IUD taken out and I didn't get a period. And at first, like, honestly, I started Googling things. I'm like, can you get pregnant when you don't get a period? And like, it honestly wasn't even definitive. So I didn't even freak out at first. I was like, oh, I guess like, maybe I could that would be great if I never got a period and I could just get pregnant and go from there. But, as time went on, I was like, yeah, I actually started doing more research and I'm like, this isn't right. I talked to my OB and she was like, I think she gave me the Provera, the progesterone challenge. And I did that twice and still didn't get a period. And so she then referred me to a reproductive endocrinologist, which like, I hadn't even heard of what that was before.
Right. Same.
Yeah. You're like, oh, great. This entirely new world.
Yeah.
And so I went to go see her and, I was on my personal life, I'm a big runner. And so I had been running marathons and what have you. And so they diagnosed me with hypothalamic amenorrhea, which again, I never heard of before.
Right.
Either.
Yeah. What is that exactly?
Yeah, so basically it's that your hypothalamus turns off more or less the sort of signals to your body, the hormonal signs that, to ovulate. And it can be caused by a bunch of different reasons. For me, they probably thought it was like, the amount of exercise I was getting and a sort of like an energy imbalance. And again, that's like something that can be solved, right? Over, making sure you eat more, maybe like exercise a little less. But I went in and the RE was like, we could solve this on our own, but like it could take more than a year. And then I can't tell you definitively that, you'll start ovulating again. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so scary. Like what?
Yeah.
But she was like super optimistic because I guess at this point I think I was 31 and was like, oh, my AMH was like off the charts high. And she was like, nope. We will just start IVF and you'll be like pregnant in no time. And I was like, whoa, like what?
Jumping from that to IVF.
Yeah, because she was like, your AMH is so high. I don't want to put you on. Your AMH is so high and your baseline stats are so far from ovulating that like if you did like a Clomid cycle, I doubt that, it would even work. And we don't want to give you just like injectables because you would be at too high of a risk of like multiples and what have you. So it was sort of like just jumping like into the deep end of the pool and like, okay, let's start on IVF, which was like really scary, because honestly, there's all these issues with, my husband and I never even like contemplated that we would have to go through that. And like, we're like, are we even like comfortable with IVF? And like, his whole family is like super Catholic. And we're like, can we tell them that kind of thing? So honestly, we were like super quiet about it. Literally didn't tell a soul.
Didn't tell his family either?
No, didn't tell anyone. But started on sort of the protocol. And through this, like, they sent me for all the sort of initial testing. And this is when I got diagnosed first with hypothyroidism. So Hashimoto's, which was actually the thing that was causing my skin issues.
Right. Okay.
But even then they were just kind of like, oh, okay, you have a thyroid problem. Like here's a pill, and you'll be fine. So did that. And then, just kind of jumped straight into IVF, did my first retrieval and got 4 embryos. So I was like, oh, that seems pretty good.
How did you do with all the stims and all the drugs and the protocol in general?
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, like, honestly, my biggest like complaint was that I was like super bloated. And at this point I was working at Cynthia Rowley. And so, part of my job was wearing like beautiful clothes every day. And like, when I would go to meetings. And so it's like, oh man, like these are not very forgiving clothes when you're like feeling like huge and bloated. Completely. But like,
were you able to tell anybody at work or anything? Or you just didn't tell a soul, like you said?
And Cynthia is actually the only person that I told. And she had actually gone through it herself. So she was like extremely supportive, which was really nice to have.
It's so nice to have that, especially in a boss, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, other than that, it was, again, completely to myself and, went through the first IVF cycle. My biggest regret, like now looking back on it is, they had asked us like, do you want to do genetic testing on the embryos? And I was like, again, just so naive. And like, the sad thing is like, you only like learn this stuff through going through the process. But I was like, oh, like, what are the benefits of that? And they're like, oh, you know whether it's a good embryo. But my RE had said, oh, well, you're young, so most of yours should be good anyway. And you're starting this like process that's like so expensive. And I'm like, well, like if ours are pretty much going to be good anyway, like why would we like incur that extra cost now? And what have you. So we didn't do genetic testing on our embryos for, this cycle. So we, got 4 and just they picked the best one. And we did our first transfer and I got the call and I was pregnant. But like kind of in the back, they were like, but your HCG is 30, which is okay, but it's on the lower end. I was like, whatever, like it's positive. And so that means I'm pregnant, right? Like, great.
Right.
And then I'd like, you'd get your first test and then you go back like 2 days later or whatever, and you keep getting tested and my HCG was going up, but it wasn't it wasn't going up as fast as they wanted it to. And so they start to get worried. And this was like the beginning of like just craziness for us, because I think it was like a week later, they, made the decision. They're like, this is maybe an ectopic pregnancy. And they brought me in. The problem is they kept doing, I must have gone in like 4 or 5 times and gotten scanned, and they couldn't even find the ectopic. And so we're like, we think it's ectopic, but like, it was like technically a pregnancy of unknown location.
I was just going to say that I had the same thing. It was a pregnancy of unknown location. And you're like,
like, what does that mean?
How is that even a thing? Get in there and find it.
Exactly. Which like through this time, it was so, for me, I was like, oh my gosh, like just like, if I'm already going to lose it, like, let's just figure it out, like get rid of it. And it was a pretty crazy time, like thinking back on it, because my husband, like, I felt so bad for him. He was like more worried about me, right? Because there's whole like the risk of rupture and like all this stuff. And I was kind of like, no, I'm fine. Like, I don't feel fine. So before they had, even identified it, I got methotrexate, which I think is like the standard, get rid of this thing.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to, for most people, it resolves within 1 or 2 shots. So I got 1 shot and they were still taking my HCG, and it was actually still going up, like not crazy amounts. So I got my second one, same thing.
Was it making you feel sick, or like, what were your symptoms?
No, honestly, the worst part was like my RE's office, like they would just call me, and the way they like handled it made me feel like it was a life or death situation in like a really scary way. So like, I remember I was going to a meeting for like at Cynthia Rowley, and I got a call as I was about to walk into a meeting, and they were like, you need to come to the Upper East Side right now and get this like methotrexate shot. And I'm like, what? Like I have like, literally I'm about to walk into a meeting. They're like, can you cancel it? So I like, I'm trying to balance like not telling anyone and going through this and working like a crazy full-time job, and also like skirting off like across town to get like a crazy like cancer drug,
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So that was crazy. So then after my second shot, I'd gone back in to my RE, and she was like, it was, you know how you go in like early in the morning. And so ironically, my main RE actually had a baby in this time. So I was like switched to another doctor in the same office, and she did a scan and still didn't find it. But she was like, have you eaten breakfast today? And I was like, no, it's like 7 a.m. And I just, I got here. And she's like, well, we could just like take the tube out today. I'm like, what? And I was just like, no. And, I think so many women go through this. Like, I'm like, I didn't have that big of an infertility issue. It was more of like a timing thing. And now you're talking about like taking out one of my tubes. Like and you can't even see it on like ultrasound. So which tube are you going to take out? So at that point I was like, no, like I can't do this. Like, let's just, wait a couple of days kind of thing. And at this point it was around Thanksgiving. So a few days later, like I think I'd gone in for, my HCG test again. I was literally about to go to my in-laws for the Thanksgiving break. I literally had my dog with me because I was taking her like to my in-laws house. And again, they call me like kind of freaking out, and they're like, you need to come back, and we're going to send you to this other like ultrasound place so we can, make sure we see it. And so I go literally with my dog to an ultrasound like specialist where they could, have better imaging. And they finally located the ectopic pregnancy. And, we're like, well, I guess at least, we know that it's here. And that's when I tried to get my a third dose of methotrexate, because I really, really didn't want to, get my tube removed.
Right.
And sorry, long story short.
No, don't be sorry. This is so interesting. And I'm so sorry that you went through all of this.
No, it's okay. So, I was like, okay, after this third dose, like I should definitely be taken care of. So it was just so dramatic. Like, again, I was about to go to one of my best friends from business school. They were getting married to each other. And I was like, had my bag packed, was ready to like go to California to go to their wedding. And my RE called me again and was like, your HCG still isn't down. Like, I don't think you should get on the airplane. I'm like, what is this?
Let's take a quick pause for an ad break, guys. I'm here to talk about a new podcast I discovered called the All Inclusive Podcast. If you know me and you follow me on Instagram, you might remember that my word for 2021 was inclusion. So when I heard about the All Inclusive Podcast, I had to give it a listen. It's hosted by a guy named Jay Rudderman, who interviews leaders and experts on the latest news, technology, and advocacy for social justice. He believes that inclusion and understanding of all people is essential to a fair and flourishing community, and that in order to make progress that will lead to an innovative future, honest discussions must be held. And that is what All Inclusive is about. To that end, Jay has interviewed people like rising political star Michelle Wu, filmmakers Peter and Bobby Farrelly, author and political scientist Norman Ornstein, Paralympic medalist Jessica Long, and so many more. There's been some really interesting conversations on a huge variety of topics. It's all inclusive because everyone is welcome. So give it a listen, guys, and you can subscribe also to the All Inclusive Podcast on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, and anywhere else podcasts are available. You can also visit the show website for more information and full episode transcripts at www.allinclusivepodcast.com. I really like what you're doing, Jay Rudderman. Check it out, guys. And together, let's all make this world a better, more inclusive place.
So at that point, we finally decided like, okay, I guess we have to like have surgery. And so I got my tube removed. And
did you go right into surgery, or what was the timing on that?
Yeah, or it was like a day or two later. It was like pretty close after that.
So wait, let me ask you this. How are you feeling emotionally? I mean, I feel like now we're, it's in the past and you can kind of talk about it a little more lightly, but like this must have been really hard.
It was so traumatic. Like I feel like I now still even have a little bit of PTSD about it, because it wasn't just like we failed. It was just this like huge thing. And my husband was like, your life is at risk. And I was like, no, it's not. Like, it's fine. He's like, no, it actually is. Yeah. And so we had gone from like, let's like start slow, and then just felt like we had been catapulted into this like insane world that again, we weren't telling anyone about. So it was like pretty lonely too.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Had you told any of your like best friends or anything, or no? Not really, honestly, like, because we had made the decision not to tell our families, and it felt weird to keep that secret from our families and tell other people. So right. Yeah. So I totally get that, but it's such a burden on yourself to not be able to like call somebody,
I really wish we had
but it's so hard, because I totally understand why you didn't, you don't really know what to do when you're in the thick of it.
Exactly. And you just want to go through it and be like, oh, I'm pregnant, and then just get to have like a happy, normal pregnancy like everyone else,
Completely.
And that's what I like totally thought was going to happen. So here we are then, a few months into this, and I only have one of my tubes, and I've just had 3 doses of this like crazy cancer drug. Mm-hmm. So they make you wait at least 3 months after having it to even try again, because they don't want it to like pass on, to the embryo. So we had to like, have a break. And then I was like, all right, let's, we got pregnant one time, we got really freaking unlucky, and now we're just going to do the next transfer and it's going to work out and we'll be fine. So we did 2 more transfers, both negative pregnancy. So it didn't work.
So sorry.
And at that point I was like, that was like really disappointing. Now, like 3 of our 4 embryos were gone, and we're like, And they couldn't give us any reasoning why. And like, they just kept, like, my protocol didn't change either, which was like, now again, looking back on it, like, I feel like I should have been like a bigger advocate for my like own health and been like, well, why isn't this working? You know, they were kind of like, well, maybe the embryos like aren't good, but you know, between these 4, like one of them will be okay. And so we finally did the last transfer and I got pregnant.
Okay.
And super excited, went in for my, you know, whatever it is, 5 or 6 week. They did the first scan. They saw like what they were supposed to see. They gave me a due date and I was just like over the moon. Right. And then I went in for my next follow-up appointment and they were expecting to see the heartbeat and they didn't see it.
So sorry. That's so hard.
Yeah. And so like, and honestly, like at that point, like I felt so pregnant. I felt like there was this, you know, my child like in me and they were just like, after the first scan, they're like, oh, okay, well, now we can like sort of do a DNC or whatever. And I was like, well, no, like, let's wait because maybe like it needs a few more days. Right. And so I pushed and kept getting a few more scans. And then it became clear that like, it just really wasn't, you know, I'd had a miscarriage. And so then I ended up having to have a DNC and honestly, like that was like one of the worst moments of my life. Like I remember them like giving me like the anesthesia to go under and I was just like bawling, crying.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Because like, not only did I lose a baby, but like, then we had, you know, we were kind of like starting over, like, what are we going to do? Like, we don't have any more embryos left. And
exactly.
It was just very like, it felt very bleak.
Right. Completely. How are you guys doing relationship wise? Cause I talk a lot about how this was really hard on my marriage. Was it hard on you guys or were you able to kind of, I mean, of course it was, I'm sure it was hard in some ways, right?
It was so hard. I mean, I feel like the good thing is that Jim, my husband, has been just so supportive, but you know, I feel like each person like experiences it so differently, right? Like the woman, because it's like her body. And I feel like men are maybe just like a little bit more like chill about it. And that sometimes like creates tension, right? Because you're like, no, I want to do the transfer as soon as humanly possible.
Completely. Yep.
But honestly, like I am somewhat thankful because it showed me like how much he just loves me and like wants to support me. And so like, you know, now having been through that, I think it's made us like stronger, but like at the time, was it like crazy? Yeah. Like it's like, it was nuts, but
right.
So at this point, you know, we're like now more than like 2 years into this whole thing. And we're like, okay, we need to like change something because this is like, you know, not okay. Like we feel like we've just been like not given information. Like I didn't even know what an ectopic pregnancy was. And like all information just like kept coming up as it was like a dire situation, it felt like. And so we're like, I think we just need to like find a new doctor and start over. And so I literally probably like researched every single reproductive endocrinologist in New York City and then went and interviewed like 4 of them. And, and we found a new doctor who I felt like from the beginning was like, well, let's literally look at every single thing that we have numbers on and started looking like more into things that hadn't been explained to me, like my thyroid, and was like, oh, I guess the one thing I forgot to mention is when I had the DNC on the miscarriage, they tested the embryo afterwards and it was normal. And so that was like a super red flag because they just like had told me like assumed like, oh, you know, these embryos just aren't normal and one of them won't be normal.
Right.
And so like if the last one they transferred was normal, like it's likely that all of them were normal and there was something else going on. So they also, my new doctor referred me to a reproductive immunologist because they were like, you have this autoimmune thyroid thing. It could be something else that's going on that your body's like, rejecting the embryos. So I went honestly went full throttle, and we did, we did another round of IVF, like a retrieval. And I saw this reproductive immunologist who like ran tests that like I'd never even heard of. And then between the two of them, just like put me on like a totally different protocol, which was, spoiler alert, ultimately successful.
Okay.
It's crazy though, because like I have no idea what worked. Like, they put me on Lovenox shots, like during the transfer. Then I was also on like a steroid for a lot longer, and I did this crazy treatment called IVIG. Have you heard of this?
But explain what it is for people who might not know.
So it's like literally a drip that you get done, and it takes like 4 hours. And I think it's used for like, honestly, it's also used for like AIDS patients and stuff like, and it's like immunoglobulin transfer that's supposed to like basically from what I understand, it's like a huge anti-inflammatory. Okay. And when you have, for me, like when you have Hashimoto's or some certain autoimmune conditions, it's, all like inflammatory. And so what can be like happen sometimes is your body like, has inflammation and won't allow the embryo to implant successfully and all of this kind of stuff. Again, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. Right. I don't know everything. But so we did these like crazy IVIG treatments. And then, I was giving myself these Lovenox shots for up till like 28 or 30 weeks of my pregnancy. But it finally worked. And we had our son, Cooper, this past August.
Wow. During a pandemic.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I was thinking about it, and, people ask me all the time, they're like, oh my God, you were like pregnant and had a kid during a pandemic. And quite honestly, like it felt, that part felt easier than like everything that we had been dealing with up until that point.
Right. That makes sense. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, pandemic? Sure. Fine. It's like, as long as I'm pregnant and the baby is healthy, like, I don't even care.
Completely. Well, I feel like once you go through infertility and the roller coaster and so many ups and downs, you can kind of get through anything. Like it puts things in perspective, right? Where you're like, that was complete hell and this I can handle.
And the waiting, right? Like, I think like I'm a super type A person. Like, I went to friggin' Harvard Business School. I'm like, okay, what do I need to do? When do I need to do it? Like, and that's like, in the beginning of like infertility treatments, that can almost be empowering because you're like, oh, okay, here's my doctor's appointments. Like, this is what I have to do.
Here's the plan. Yes.
Yeah. Here's the plan. And then there's like so much waiting involved, whether it's like just the 2-week wait, or for us, like when we, had to wait 3+ months after the methotrexate, like, and I think you just finally get comfortable with like knowing that you're not going to know immediately. And that's like over the pandemic, I feel like that's something that like actually has been useful.
Yeah, no, I get that. But I think it is so hard too. And, a lot of people I talk to and a lot of our fertility rally members too, talk about how a lot of us are like type A personalities. And it's like, if I want something, I do all the things to get it and I get it, that's how it works in so many areas of your life. You work really hard at something and you make it happen. But with infertility, it doesn't work that way. And it's so frustrating.
It is so frustrating.
Yeah. And there's so many variables and so many things out of your control and so many things the doctors don't even know still, everybody's so different.
From me in this whole experience, what I've learned the most is like, you just have to be like your own advocate. Like, totally. And when I had gone through this, like when I had gone through the miscarriage and I literally started reading like every book I could get my hands on, and like really felt like I went through all of my like own labs, like legitimately I like requested for my RE. I'm like, I want to see like all my labs. And I went
Good
through
for you.
Because I'm like, it's not only like, it's time, and time is so precious. And I feel like, it's not necessarily their fault, but they're like, okay, here's kind of our system, and we try and then we try again. And like, that sounds okay when it's like, at a broader sort of level, like, but when it's you and it's like, no, like every month and like, I don't want to have any more failed transfers. Cause like, I don't know for you, if you had any failed transfers, but like that feels like a loss, even if you never get a positive pregnancy test, right?
So yeah, no, luckily I only did the one round of IVF, and I was so lucky that it was successful. So I didn't have a failed transfer, but so many people do, multiple fails, and it's really tricky.
The other thing that like I realized, like when we were finally successful, that was just, I feel like it's just a part of my identity now, because after having losses, and I know you had some losses, like you just realize like you're never going to have like a normal pregnancy, or at least like for me, I'm not like, instead of just being like I was over the moon, but like I was scared, like every single appointment, like I was like, please, like, let me see the heart. Let me see like what's going on. And that was the craziest thing with COVID, because when we finally went in for our 20-week appointment, my husband wasn't allowed. So it was like just me. So I'm like, laying there, like just terrified that like
dreading waiting for the other shoe to drop. Right.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I've just been like trained to be disappointed, and thankfully that didn't happen. But like, there's just like some scarring aspect where I think, what people I wish talked about more is like, it's okay that you aren't like, that you're nervous and scared and aren't just so casual about it like other people get to be. And it's frustrating, but like, it's just sort of the way that like experience shapes you,
100%. And, we've been talking about that a lot more as the pregnancy after infertility, a pregnancy after loss. And you're exactly right. It's so complicated. And you also, a lot of women say, and I've felt this way too, you don't want to complain. And because you feel like you're so lucky to be there. And if you complain, people will be like, well, you wanted this, you worked so hard to have it, which is kind of fucked up. Right. Cause like, it's still hard, and you can still, of course, complain. It doesn't mean that pregnancy is easy. So I think that's something too, that I'm glad that you mentioned it. And I'm glad that people are talking about that more. We actually started doing a pregnancy after infertility support group every Monday night at Fertility Rally, because we feel like people need, people need that level of support too. And like our members were becoming pregnant, thankfully, over the last year since we launched in June. But it was like, we didn't want to be like, all right, cool, bye, you're pregnant. Like you still need that support, because you're still going through trauma, and the PTSD is real. So I think that's something that, it's good that more people are talking about that, because
I love what you're doing, because it's it's like, I couldn't even say the word infertility. And like, honestly, still like, it sometimes gives me like the heebie jeebies, because I'm like, well, no, like I'm not infertile. I've just had issues, but like,
no, I know it's not a good word. It's like, ooh.
I know, we need a new phrase.
Totally. Completely. But yeah, I agree with you. And it's hard to grapple with the fact that that's a diagnosis for so many of us. And I think there's also like the kind of gray areas where it's like, well, am I? But am I not? Like you're not really sure kind of where you fit in.
I still have like hopes that like because we want to have more kids, that like, maybe I won't need to do IVF for all of them. But like, I'm okay with it if I have to, but I'm like, just like, whatever. It's like this like badge of achievement to be able to be like, oh, I had, a child naturally.
Completely.
And like,
I get that.
I may never get there, but like, you kind of want that.
Right. Did you ever end up telling the family, or did they?
Yeah, no, we told the family. And honestly, so like going through this whole experience, and then, when I started to connect the dots on like my skin issue to like my thyroid and just everything I had been through, I like really came to this like aha moment when I was like, holy shit, like my like thyroid was literally directly causing like probably a lot of my infertility issues, and like thyroid issues are also known to cause hypothalamic amenorrhea. So that even though they're like, oh, it's just because you're a runner, like I'll never know for certain, but like it probably is also because of my thyroid issue. And I'm like, I'm so frustrated because literally years before, if I had, had some tests done, some proactive testing, I would have not only been able to figure out my skin problem, but then also kind of gotten some early insights into my potential infertility issues and been able to, I believe, like get some natural remedies around that. I would have like got my IUD out, started tracking my cycle, really gotten that like proactive care before I was kind of like, well, I wanted to be pregnant yesterday. So like, you kind of throw the book at the situation. And from that, I was like, all right, that gave me the idea for Veracity, and which, we launched last year or end of last year. And in that, I was like, I've always been like a very personal, like private person, as you can tell from literally not telling a soul that we were going through this.
Right. But now you're telling the whole world.
Yeah, which is freaking scary. And I had to have a conversation with my husband. I was like, you know what? I think this is like sort of my life's mission. Like, it's like, I need to help women give more proactive insights into their health, whether it's for fertility or, and I really believe that like, everyone wants better skin. And so if we can give people a better insight into their, health, that will help improve their skin and also maybe give them some insights into other stuff that's going on. Like that's so meaningful and so
I love it.
So worthwhile. So
yeah, absolutely.
So, but from that, I was like, I got to tell my story. Otherwise people are going to be like, where did you come up with this? And,
totally.
And that was like so scary to be like, all right, I'm going to put it all out there.
Yeah. But you know what? You are helping so many people. And even just from this conversation, telling people to advocate for themselves. I never knew that. And I think that, people listening to this will feel empowered and be like, oh, I got to look at the reports. I got to make the calls. I have to do the research, and they will. Yeah, so
I hope so. I mean, even if you have a good doctor, it's just like, they can't necessarily look into every single like case that much. So it's like, you got to be there to ask the questions and to get answers and to make your case, matter.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to my conversation with Allie, and definitely check out Veracity, her skincare line. Also, guys, this weekend is Fertility Rally Live. This is the event that Blair and I have been pouring our hearts into for months. We've got so many great speakers. We've got giveaways all day, powerful breakout sessions. You're going to walk away feeling supported and loved and empowered, and we would love to rally with you. So check everything out at fertilityrally.com. Follow us on Instagram at Fertility Rally, and we hope to see you there.